get your scuba gear on. Let's go swim with the dolphins.
Oh, here they come! Dolphins are perfectly adapted to their environment. They have nothing to do but swim and play all day. They have massive brains. They're incredibly intelligent. If dolphins bought insurance, they...
Hi and welcome once again to Selsey Internet Radio. Lovely sunny day it is today. And just to bring the sunshine into the studio, we've got Lynn Reeve, our own little sunbeam, who's going to tell us what's on in and around the village for the coming week. Lynn, good morning.
Hello, Keith. I love your introductions. I really do. I look forward to them every week. I get called so many things in this studio. We're going to start off the week on Monday the 22nd of June with ladies netball at the Academy School from 7 to 8 o'clock. That'll be a good one, won't it?
Will,
you could
yes.
go along to that, Keith, couldn't you?
I tried to send my wife. She didn't want to go, but I tried to send
Oh,
her.
bless
I said, well, my son's very big into basketball at the moment. So I
Yeah.
said, well, she could go along to netball, couldn't she? And they'd have something to talk about, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Something similar.
But then you could go in her stead, don a little netball skirt and try, try kicking the ball about or whatever it is they do with the things.
I
Selsey
keep that
Walkers
list.
are meeting, Keith, moving on. Selsey Walkers are meeting at 8 o'clock outside of Budgeons on Tuesday the 23rd of June.
Ah,
All right, so
I'll be
I
gone by
don't
the
know
time
where...
I get there.
Yeah,
The walk's off.
hopefully.
I can't keep up.
Hopefully. I don't know where they're going, but it sounds quite good if you like walking around the village or whatever. Outside Budgeons then on the 23rd of June at 8 o'clock in the morning. On Tuesday the 23rd of June, the Selsey Venture Club will be holding their annual general meeting in St Peter's Church Hall at 2:30pm. All Venture Bus members are welcome to attend, and Venture buses will be available. Please book the bus by calling into the office or phoning on 605 115 and refreshments will be available. So that's Tuesday the 23rd of June at 2:30pm, St Peter's Church Hall. On Wednesday the 24th of June, the Seal Island Swimming Club meet at the Oasis Pool on Wednesdays and Fridays at 9:30am. Fancy a bit of swimming as well. We're very energetic lot in Selsey, you know that, don't you? Well, some people are
I
anyway.
take it, when you go and get this information, you actually join in with all this, do you?
No.
Ah.
No, I can't lie on the radio. No.
No.
No. Wednesday the 24th of June, Selsey Model Boat Club will be meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning until noon for their midweek meeting. So 10am to 12 o'clock on Wednesday the 24th of June for the Selsey Model Boat Club. I guess that's down at the pond. Must be, mustn't it? I would have thought it's down at the pond.
Yep.
And yeah, it's quite interesting to go and watch, actually. On Thursday the 25th of June, the quiz night at the Fisherman's Joy in East Street starts at 8:30. It says AM here, but I'm sure they mean PM. I'm sure they won't like people knocking on the door at 8:30 in the morning.
Probably goes on till AM.
Unless they do a nice
8:30
breakfast, unless they do a nice bacon and egg,
Well,
and
they might
something
well
like
do.
that. You know, it might be different, mightn't it?
Yeah, it might well be.
A breakfast quiz. That'd be very different. Yeah. There you go, Fisherman's Joy. Bacon, butters and a quiz. But no, it's not. It's at 8:30pm on Thursday the 25th of June. Also on Thursday the 25th of June, Manhood Trefoil Guild, Guiding for Adults, meet at 7:30pm in the Selsey Centre with Mrs Brenda Matthews, the speaker for the evening, giving a talk entitled They're Not to be Sneezed At. New members are always welcome and contact Mary Collins on 602 849. They're not to be sneezed at, Keith.
Absolutely not.
Sounds like an interesting little talk. I wonder what is not to be sneezed at.
I don't know.
No,
I don't know very much about the Trefoil
Well, you're going to have to
Guild.
go along and tell us.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be good, wouldn't it? You can report back what's not to be sneezed at.
Well, it probably suit me more than joining in with the walkers, the swimmers, the runners.
Well,
and
I was going to
everybody
say, you
else.
keep trying to get me to join in the walkers and the swimmers, so maybe you can go along to this.
Maybe I'll
and-
find out about the Trefoil
Okay
Guild.
then, that's good, that's a deal. On Friday the 26th of June, Selsey Youth Rea will meet at the Selsey Centre doors, open at 2pm, meeting commences at 2:30pm, and the speaker for the afternoon will be Tony Turner, telling about the history of a country house called Swallowfield. The history is both local and about the new generation in Australia. More information relating to Youth Rea can be found on selseyyouthrea.org.uk. On Saturday the 27th of June, the Sussex Grange Garden Fete at 2pm, where you will find various stalls, tombola, bric-a-brac, plants, raffle. Aren't the gardens looking lovely? going on about plants now,
Whose
sorry.
gardens?
Everybody's gardens.
Oh, everybody's
The
gardens,
roses
yeah.
are so beautiful. People are walking along my road and photographing all the roses because they're all different colours. They're gorgeous. Anyway, I diverse. Bric-a-brac plants, raffle, bouncy castle and refreshments, of course. Admission is just 20p with all proceeds donated to St Wilfrid's Hospice and the Alzheimer's Society. Sussex Grange Garden Fete that was at 2pm on Saturday the 27th of June. On Sunday the 28th of June, the PTA car boot sale at the Academy is on again with sellers from 7:30am and buyers from 8am to 1pm with weather permitting. So hopefully it's not too rainy that day and you can go along and get another little bargain. Also on Sunday the 28th of June, there's a cream tea in aid of cystic fibrosis and snowdrop at 3 to 5pm at 19 Grafton Road. So a lovely cream tea to be had there.
Cream tea.
Yeah, beautiful. Nice scone, fresh clotted
What's
cream,
gone?
strawberries.
What's gone?
It's a scone tea, you bet it, then it's gone.
Very good.
On Monday the 29th of June, forthcoming film show at the Town Hall with a film entitled Still Alice, a skillfully written account of one woman's struggle against dementia. And this is an ultimately excellent film, a trailer of which can be seen on the Selsey Cinema Club page. Films start at 7:30pm and tickets only cost £5 and they can be obtained from the box office on 605 803. That would be really, really interesting and I might do that one myself and come and report back on that. A skillfully written account of one woman's struggle against dementia. Sounds a bit like me.
Yeah, I bet you forget to go. I bet you forget to go.
No, it doesn't, and I'm really grateful that it doesn't.
No,
but I
absolutely.
bet I don't forget to go to that. I will do that. Yeah, it sounds good. Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
that's all I have for this week.
So that's it. It's
Okay.
gone.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Lynn. I
You're
look
welcome.
forward to see you again next week.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
My next guest in the studio this morning is a gentleman called Robbie Burns. Robbie is from Chichester area Talking News. Now this is a service provided for partially sighted or blind people, and I think probably better if I let Robbie tell you a bit more about it. Robbie, over to you.
Yes, that's quite correct. It's a service that was started in 1975 by a lady called Eileen Brown, and she'd heard that Portsmouth Talking News had started up at the beginning in 1975, and as she was involved in sports for disabilities and also helping blind people play golf, she thought it'd be a good idea if she started one up for the Chichester area, and it's exactly what she did.
I've played a lot of golf like a blind person, I can promise you, over the years. But what an amazing thing to do, to start up to help blind or partially sighted golfers. It's incredible.
Yeah, yes, I can't tell you much about that,
Yeah.
but she was quite a feisty lady, and she gathered some people around her, some volunteers. She put an advert in the local paper, and that's where I first became involved. And from then on, they produced the first tapes from someone's living room, and once they'd done that, they rushed it down to Portsmouth, their Talking News, and they copied it onto tapes, and then we sent them out in the post to our first listeners that amounted to about 42 people.
Great. How technology must have changed what you do now, because I noticed the little gadget that you brought with you this morning, which Robbie refers to as the boom box, and it's about 6 inches by 3 inches by 3 inches, and it's a wonderful piece of kit. You just plug in your USB stick, and it does what it says. It's a boom box. It plays it, and it plays it at a good volume. You could have it on in the kitchen or in the lounge and listen to it in the kitchen. It's quite a powerful little bit of kit. And how different that is from having to cart a big tape player around with you if you wanted to do that 40 years ago.
Most certainly. I can remember those days. We used to buy a quantity of tape recorders, and we used to loan them out and had to keep an eye on where they all were. And of course we were recording on tapes in those days, and they were notoriously awkward for blind and partially-sighted people, because you get the phone call saying my tape's all unwound or wound up in the machine, and so we had to go out and with our biro or pen or a pair of scissors and extravate the tape and make it better. We took the conscious decision about 5 or 6 years ago that tapes had their day. And we didn't want to say we were just going over to CDs and leave it at that, because most of our listeners are fairly elderly, because sight problems come with age. So we went to see them all and explained to them all what we were doing, and we showed them this lovely little thing. No, sorry, we went on to tapes to start with, so to CDs, because most of our listeners had CD players, and so that was the next way we went, and we record on non-recordable CDs. So once they're used, that's it, they're recycled. And then about 4 years ago, we decided we would go on to memory sticks, because that was the new technology. And so we again went and saw all our listeners who were still on tapes. We were on tapes and CDs, and said, we're doing away with tapes. This is the new bit of technology. Would you like to go ahead with it? And I think 99% of our listeners that were on tapes said, yes, we would. And so we did away with the tapes. We lost about half a dozen listeners, because as you get old, you become set in your ways. I mean, we all
very
do.
much so.
But we had this, as you say, this wonderful little machine called a boombox, made by a company that specialised in producing items for blind and partially sighted people. And they've made it as simple as they can. It's got a lovely sound to it. It's very transportable, rechargeable battery, so you can play it, as you say, anywhere in the house or in the garden if you want to annoy the neighbours. And it's got a lovely sound to it. And so that's where we are today. So we're recording on CDs and memory sticks, and hopefully we will gradually do away with the CDs and have all memory sticks. But by then I expect there'll be some new technology out.
Well, possibly, but I mean, because the cost of memory sticks has come down dramatically over the past few years, isn't it? I mean, initially they were quite expensive for quite a small memory. Now they're pennies for the sort of memory that you would need to put that.
That's right.
You know,
yes, I think we pay about £3.50 for a quantity of memory sticks, because we do have around about 370 listeners. So you can imagine about half of those now on memory sticks, and the other.
Of course, those have got to be rotated. People have got them. Some are sending them back.
That's
and
correct,
they've got to be wiped clean, as it were. And so yeah. It must keep you busy just doing that alone.
Indeed. Well, if I can explain, we have 3 production teams, if it's okay to explain.
Yeah,
this.
absolutely.
I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Oh, no problem there.
On the Thursday, when the Observer newspaper comes out, because we cover Chichester, Bognor and Midhurst and Petworth, we have 3 lots of newspapers. So the producer decides what he's going to put onto the CD and the memory stick, and he has the technical man come in and perhaps 2 or 3 readers, and then they get set to and record on a master CD and a master memory stick. Once their job is done, they go from the studio, and then the copying team comes in, 2 people, and we have high-speed copiers for the CDs and we have high-speed copiers for the memory sticks. So they do their bit, they record onto all these memory sticks and CDs, put them in the individual plastic wallets, and send them out to the listeners. And we have 3 teams like that, so they don't spend too much time working for Talking News.
Yeah.
And when I say working for Talking News, they're all volunteers, no one gets paid.
I mean, I do know from personal experience what an invaluable service is, because my father and his partner are both registered blind. They're both very poorly sighted, and they get the Talking News in the local area where they are, and to them it's a lifeline.
That's right. Yeah,
they look forward to it coming, and it's just like getting the newspaper dropped through the door almost, and you can keep up with local news and gossip and whatever that's going on, and they really do enjoy it, and they really do look forward to it.
Exactly, and that's what it does. They retain a certain amount of independence and can still know what's going on around them without having to traipse to the shops. Well, they don't, because they can't read the newspaper.
That's right, absolutely.
So it is an invaluable service, and they do appreciate what we do for them.
I'm sure they do. Well, I know, as I say, I know my dad does it. He lives in Windsor, and the local area Talking newspaper there. I don't think they could do without it now. They've become that reliant on keeping up with what's going on purely by this means of communication.
Yeah.
Now, is there a cost involved in all this? I mean, it's an awful lot of work.
There is to us, but not to our listeners. As I say, it's a service that's completely free of charge to them. But over the years, we've had the odd legacy. We've done fundraising. Our listeners have been generous to us by giving us donations. So we do have a certain amount of money in the pot to cover all the costs of the equipment and what we have to buy.
Well, that's fantastic, and to be able to provide a service. And of course, I believe that if somebody comes to you and says, "Look, I'd like to take up this talking news service, as it were, that you can point them in the right direction to get the right pieces of equipment, like the boom box, or
Most certainly.
or,
Yes.
you know, if they want to purchase one for themselves rather than hire one, or whatever it is you do with them. I mean, do you rent them out, or do you?
No, we loan them to the
just
people
loan them
completely
out.
free of charge. So that if they decide after 6 months or a few years that it's not for them, then they just write and let us know, and they send us the boombox back. But otherwise, it's completely free of charge.
Well, that's incredible, and I would urge anybody out there that's partially sighted or blind who hasn't tried this out, get in touch with Robbie, because it's a wonderful thing, and it'll keep you up to date with what's going on in the area without you having to rely on other people to tell you. And as Robbie said, the equipment and the service is free, unless you want to make a donation. So, Robbie, could you give us the contact details so that people that come rushing to your door now?
Yes, certainly. Our local telephone number is 01243 775050. The office is manned just a few hours a day, but we do have an answering machine, so please leave a message on that with your name and telephone number, and we will get back to you within a few days. Or we have a website for those that I can never remember that. It's studio@catn.org.uk. So if you have one of these super duper computers these days, then you can contact us via that medium as well. Also,
That's the email address.
That's the email address. Also, we have a website, and you can in fact listen to the Talking News on our website. It's all recorded onto there as well.
Right.
And what happens, as soon as we hear from you, we will contact an area helper who will contact yourself, if you're applying to have the service, to make an arrangement with you to come out at your convenience to show you the equipment and how it all works. And then we just go on from there. And what you do, you listen to the CD or memory stick. Once you finish listening to it, you put it in the plastic wallet, send it back to our studio. It's all pre-labelled, so you haven't got that to do, and it's all free of charge postage-wise. And all the time you keep sending one back to us, we re-record it with all the new news and then send it back to you, so you get the news once a fortnight. In addition, every quarter we do an Insight magazine, again on CD and memory stick, more in-depth articles from local people who have done something interesting, or local organisations. Again, that lasts about an hour, the same as the normal news production.
Okay, well, that's brilliant. Thanks for coming in, Robbie. I can't tell people how valuable this service is, because I know what it does for my own dad. So
that's good.
I would urge people to contact you and take it up if they're in a position where they can't read newspapers or they can't get the information, because it really is vital that they keep in touch with what's going on and they still feel part of the community.
That's right, yes. And having said we have nearly 400 listeners, with the equipment we have, we can send out CDs and memory sticks to many, many more. So you won't inundate us if you start phoning in. I mean, will you allow me just to mention one more thing?
Oh, absolutely.
As I said previously, we have area helpers covering Selsey, or sorry, not Selsey, but Midhurst and Petworth, various bits of Bognor and Chichester and Bosham and Witterings. At the moment, we don't have an area helper for the Selsey Peninsula, because Alan Bailey, who's been our volunteer for many, many years, is recovering from a nasty bug, so he's out of operation. So if anyone has a few hours to go and see a new listener, we would train you quite well, then please again get in touch with us.
Well, let's hope we can get somebody to help you out with that, Robbie. Now, I'm sure there must be somebody out there listening that could spare just a little bit of time, and it won't be a tremendous amount of time at all, just to go around and see any new applicants, as it were, and train them in what to do and what to use. And it'll be time well spent on a service that I know personally is a tremendous service for people that are partially sighted or completely blind, and it keeps them in touch with the community. So if you've got a little bit of time to spare, then get in touch with Robbie. He'll be only too pleased to hear from you. Now, I'm going to jump off the programme schedule just for a minute here, because I would like to say a great big thank you to the local bus drivers, because the bus drivers, in my opinion, are tremendous. They've always got a smile, they're always helpful, if they see you running for the bus, they won't pull off, or most of them. They'll stop and they'll wait for you, or even if they see you approaching the bus stop and they may not be sure that you want to get on, they'll slow down and wait to see it, to see if you do. So, and if you're elderly, they make sure that you're seated before they pull away. I think they do a tremendous job, and so I would just like to say a great big thank you from me personally, and if you know any different, by all means contact us. But I would like to say a great big thank you to our local bus drivers. Now, a couple of weeks ago we had Michael Fletcher from Landlink Estates in the studio. Now, Michael's the man in charge, so to speak, of the application for the development of the Asda site, as it's become known locally. And we thought it only fair to give somebody that's against the development the opportunity to air their views. So this morning we have Donna Johnson in the studio, and Donna's going to tell us why she's against it. Donna, good morning.
Good morning. Well, thank you very much for allowing us to come in.
It's not a problem at all. Now, my understanding is that it's a done deal almost, but not 100% done deal. Could you just explain the bit that's not done?
Okay.
I think most people like me think that it's a given now that it's gone through, but I do believe there's just a small chance that it may still be.
Well, the situation at the moment is that it's in the hands of the National Planning Office, the planning unit which is up in Birmingham. They will make a decision, possibly by the 23rd of June. They can ask for a deferment, and if they need any further information, or if they haven't had long enough to actually go through the paperwork. They will make a recommendation then. That recommendation will either be that it is called in by the Secretary of State, or they will say, well, we'll just let it go ahead. I've had a word with two town planners, one of whom has said to me, this is probably it's a rubber stamp job. Another has said, actually, you can never tell. However, we have to be aware that even if the Secretary of State doesn't call it in, there are still options open, and they are being explored by people who are objecting.
Okay.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end of it.
So I think that clears it up for anybody
Yeah.
that's listening, that it's not actually a 100% done deal
No, it's
up
not.
to yet.
No,
So,
no.
if you are against it, you don't need to be giving up hope just yet, because there's a possibility that... Now, what is it that most people that are against it are against? Is it the fact that it's a big retail outlet coming into the village, or is it the housing? I mean, I have my own opinions on it, and I've no problem with Asda coming in. I personally don't relish the idea of more housing, but that's my own personal opinion. Does that fall in line with most people that you come across, or are they against the housing or against Asda's per se?
I think one of the problems that we have with this application is that because it's a hybrid, it's massive. That means that we have full planning permission granted for part of it and only outline for the rest. So in terms of outline planning permission, we have no idea. It may be built, it may not be built. We don't know. It's on the indicative plan, so we can't say. As regards where people are on it, there are certainly people who are very unhappy about the housing. Not that they don't want the housing, absolutely not. But there are concerns that the infrastructure is not in place, and that these houses together with the Barrack development will tip us over the edge. We already have a situation where the doctors have had to amalgamate because they're finding recruitment impossible. So if we're then going to have up to another 400 houses, if we put the two developments together, that's going to generate a lot of people, a lot of cars, problems with the schools, etc., etc. Maybe the schools aren't in a position to be able to expand. Nobody that I've spoken to has a major difficulty with the housing, except for the fact that they want assurances that the infrastructure is going to be able to deal with that, which I think is wholly reasonable.
Yes, yeah, I wouldn't argue with that.
I think that's completely reasonable. Providing that Selsey can cope with that, providing that the statutory services can cope with that, that's okay.
Well, I would think that pretty much anybody that tries to get an appointment down at the doctor's surgeries at the moment, will appreciate that something needs to be done
Absolutely.
to improve the service there, because my understanding is that the doctors say they can cope with the extra influx. The evidence is when you're sitting there trying to make an appointment and can't get one for a week and a half, 2 weeks, is that perhaps they've got it wrong. But once again, that's only my personal opinion. But it would seem to be the case. And just picking up on a point you made there, because a lot of people don't realise that it's not just 150 houses and Asdas. Now,
That's right.
you just mentioned up to 400 houses.
Well, that's if we take both developments. We have got the Pye development, which was bought out by Barrett's. So we have to put the two developments together, and that's when you come up with the sort of upwards of 400 houses, which of course is going to generate maybe 800 plus people, which is very significant. And that, obviously people are concerned about that, because that may just tip Selsey over to the point where it can no longer cope. So yes, housing is an issue. It has been mentioned. There is no doubt that those people objecting, many people have great concerns about that. But there is no doubt that this is not it's not called the Asda development for no reason. It's called the Asda development because of Asda.
Well, Asda, it's something I knew before I moved down there. Nothing to do with the Asda development that we've got. But Asda, as a company, almost always build houses where they build a superstore or where they build a supermarket.
Of course.
And they're known for doing that. Tesco's not so, but Asda's are known to build houses wherever they can get the store.
Yes.
So it's not something that's new, and you can expect it with Asda's. Coming on to Asda's, is it something that you believe is not necessary for the town, but village? I always call it a village. You call it what you like, but I always refer to it as a village purely because of the atmosphere. Is it something you think that is not necessary for the village?
I think it's completely necessary to have a competitively priced supermarket. Absolutely. I have no issue with that at all. Those of us objecting, I don't think I've spoken to anybody who said we don't want to have a supermarket, we don't want to have a reasonably competitively priced supermarket in Selsey. The issue is its location. And the problem that we have with this, of course, is that at the moment we have a neighbourhood plan which is emergent. So it carries a little bit of weight, but not a great deal of weight, given that it only had a 1% response rate and 10% is considered low, 20% is considered high. We were 1% of 10%. So, that was a pretty low response rate. So what we have is a situation where the land at Park Farm is technically unallocated land. It hasn't been ratified at referendum, and it may not be ratified. So what happens if at the end of the year actually the good people of Selsey say, actually we're not happy with this neighbourhood plan, we want to throw it out and start again? We're left with a major development right on the edge of town. Now, one of the things that any supermarket has to do by law is, if a neighbourhood plan hasn't been adopted, and this hasn't been adopted, is to carry out a very robust sequential test. Now, Asda, of course, saw no reason to do that for two reasons. One, because they were basically offered the land at Park Farm, and secondly, because they have said in their retail assessment that actually their interest in the town is entirely for a highly visible store which is easily accessible from the main road. Now, with respect, that completely contravenes national planning policy, which says if a neighbourhood plan has not been adopted, then a robust sequential test has to take place, and every option should be adequately, robustly explored. And one of those options was Budgeons. Now, again, national planning policy says that actually, in order not to split the retail areas, it's ideal that you keep them within 300 metres. So therefore, national planning policy says what you have to do is to be very flexible in terms of scale. So we have Budgeons who have said publicly, if Asda move to Park Farm, we will fold. So I'm not aware, having spoken to many, many people about this, that anybody necessarily wants a store twice the size of Budgeon's. It would be nice to have a decent, competitively priced supermarket. So I have to say, why did they not really robustly explore the possibility of moving into Budgeon's? Then I think everyone would be happy. We would not be having the controversy that we have over this at the moment.
But Budgeon's, of course, have said if the Asda's goes ahead, they will fold, but they haven't said they'll fold beforehand.
No,
so
they have said that they would go. They said if people had gone to speak to them...
From what I understand, Kavanagh's have sold out Budgeon's anyway, but that's only hearsay, and
Kavanagh's
there's an awful lot of that at the moment.
Kavanagh's has been, not Kavanagh's, but Budgeon's has been bought up by Booker's,
Yes,
and Budgeon's itself is a franchise, of which Kavanagh's happened to hold that one. But they have been quite clear that if Asda had gone to speak with them, then they would have been prepared to enter into negotiations with them.
That kind of answers one question that we had sent in by a listener who said, where would you, if Asda was 300 metres from the centre of Selsey, how would you manage with parking and delivery lorries? Well,
Budgeon's manage.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much answered.
I suppose the store would be of a size where it would still be manageable then, so I can see what you're saying.
It's very similar to the supermarket size that Asda have in Bexley Heath.
I believe, from what I understand, it's the proposed Asda development here, the store itself, is around twice the size of Budgeon's.
It's about 85% larger.
Yeah, well, yeah. So
but then again, the point is that the neighbourhood plan itself, when it indicates, two people actually asked for it, and I think obviously there are more people who want it, we have to recognise that. Nobody actually said, we want a store twice the size of Budgeon's. People merely said, look, Budgeon's is expensive, etc., etc. We've only got one stock, we've only got the co-op. We want somewhere which is much more competitively priced. So, I say again, it contravenes national planning policy because actually Asda, or in this case Landlink, obviously as their people, did not robustly explore the possibility of buying Budgeon's out. That's it, fact.
Well, if that is a fact, and I've no reason to doubt that it is, then the powers that be must surely take this up, otherwise it wouldn't be legal.
Well, those of us objecting have been trying for a long time and to get the officers to actually say what that, to talk about the problems with this sequential test. The other thing is that in line with the MPPF, if a supermarket looks at a town and decides that, well, there isn't anywhere, they're supposed to give very good reasons for it, and those reasons haven't been forthcoming. We've been trying very, very hard to enter into discussions with the officers about this. Again, a lot of the paperwork that was actually given to the councillors just prior to the planning meeting actually was incorrect. There were factual incorrections.
Okay, well, moving on from the technical issues and the dotting of the I's and crossing of the T's by the powers that be, we've got one or two questions that have come in from other people via other methods. And Angus asks, what else can be done to improve Selsey for both residents and visitors alike? What would you do if you could do whatever you liked?
Well, I think there's a lot we can do. One of the things that we're trying to do with my other hat on is to try to communicate far better with the people of Selsey and maybe think about setting up things like residents groups, community associations, etc., so that we actually have a far better view of how people see the town progressing. One thing I do think is a shame is that shortly after the Portus Review was published in 2011, the government did actually make available a great deal of money for things called town teams, where there would be a visible presence of people from the community who would be persistently taking in information from members of the public and trying to make things happen within the
I thought that's what we
towns.
had councils for.
Well, I think the thing is, for a council has to really communicate very robustly with the community, and the community has to feel that it can robustly communicate with the council, and I think that's something which hopefully is being worked on now. But yes, we could have, unfortunately, we've missed out on funding for that, but that was an option then, and I think it's rather sad that wasn't robustly explored when it could have been. But I think, yes, we have to begin by making sure that we are engaging with everybody within the community and listening to what they say, listening to their ideas, and hopefully get more than a 1% response rate. Then we might have a very clear idea about the direction that people would like Selsey to go in.
Low responses to anything, the norm in Selsey, I think.
I think it's the norm everywhere.
Yeah.
It depends,
Some people become very passionate about certain items, and they'll turn out regardless and make their points known. But generally in Selsey, it's very difficult to get people to come forward with their ideas or to voice their opinions. They just seem to want to sit back and live a quiet life, which is probably why they moved here in the first place.
I think that's the issue, isn't it? When I hear people say, well, why don't you want to drag Selsey into the 21st century? Well, actually there's thousands of people who've chosen to settle here because there is something slightly anachronistic about it. There is something a little bit quaint in some ways about it. And actually we have to remember that if we change the character of the town too much, then we face the possibility of a major economic impact, because there are many, many people who go to Bun Leisure because we are the way we are. Once we start changing the character of the town too much, particularly if Asda hemorrhages business from the high street and the high street starts to be very compromised, then we have to think ahead and say, how is that actually going to impact on tourism?
Can I jump in there?
Sorry,
Can I just jump in there with just a thought that the high street is already compromised without Asda. So that's already happening. And I don't think for one moment, my opinion, is that Asda won't kill Selsey. Selsey itself will kill Selsey unless they do something about the high street now.
Oh, I agree.
So that needs to be done now. So I think we need to get away from the fact that Asda is going to destroy Selsey. It's not. And as far as Bun Leisure is concerned, I don't think that many people now come from Bun Leisure up to the high street to be able to say, not like they did a few years ago even. We don't get that amount of people back on the high street now from Bun Leisure, because Bun Leisure has everything they need to be contained down there, so why would they come up? You have to give them something to make them want to come up. You have to put something on the high street that says, yes, we want to go up and see that, we want to go up and do that, whatever it is. But I don't think that Asda itself will kill Selsey. Just the lack of commitment from everybody together to voice an opinion is to say, we want this on the high street. That's what will kill Selsey.
I don't think, though, if you have a situation like that it's necessarily right to say, okay, we'll then bring in a store which is potentially going to compromise it even more. What we need to do is to tap into funding, tap into whatever is available, all sorts of advice. Then trust me, there's a mountain out there, and focus the attention on the high street.
Yes.
Okay, my concern is that by bringing in Asda in a location which will divide the high street, because it's actually 0.8 of a mile away from the high street. It's not well connected to it, again in contravention of the NPPF. It's by no means well connected to it. That will possibly just tip it over the edge, and we won't actually have an opportunity to be able to start to focus resources and to really concentrate on the high street and to see what we can really do. And this is what concerns me about the neighbourhood plan. This development, this whole development has been pushed through, it's been driven through, and it's an incredibly contentious development, which I said last August when I actually stood up at the council and I spoke. I said this has actually really affected the community in Selsey. Whether it goes ahead, whether it doesn't, it's polarised the community.
No, it certainly has.
So
Lynn
therefore,
and I fall out over it regularly.
Exactly.
I wouldn't say fallout, but we have a difference
We
in
have a
opinion.
discussion.
Can I come in with a bit?
Yeah, of
See,
course.
I came here 5 years ago, and I rather relish the thought of not having to go up to the main supermarkets in Chichester and
I
elsewhere
think everybody has that in them, Dennis.
and be able to
yeah.
leave the car, which would be environmentally good, and walk up to it. Therefore, I get a walk. You said about the size of supermarkets. I think everybody would love a big supermarket.
Yeah.
Because as far as I can see, economically, that's the way they hold the prices down, because they can get more in there. And I would reckon the hidden voice around Selsey are cherishing the thought of that they can go up to somewhere. They're not telling you, but they would love it.
You know my view on it, Dennis. My views are personally very, very selfish.
I think that we need to get away.
I would love for Selsey to be nothing more than a dormitory town.
Yeah.
No, but a nice little quiet backwater that nobody wanted to visit, but everybody came home to. That's what I would love. Which is pretty much what it was when I first started coming down here.
I saw some protesters outside Budgeons, about 5 or 6 of them, and the thought that came into my head was all these are going to be shopping at Asda. Protesters, yeah, saying no to Asda.
I was not there.
No, I didn't say you were there, but they were there, several ladies, and people were passing them, and they were going no to Asda. And I reckon you'd find all those at Asda.
I think they'll all be in there shopping because everybody will want to go and see what Asda's got to offer. And that is the fact.
Everybody will go in there.
Lots and lots of people today travel to Asda, not just to work from Selsey. They actually come from Selsey to Asda to work because the jobs that they've said that they're going to provide, some of those are already taken by people that already travel to another Asda store. So people in Selsey will get those jobs. But it's not just for people to work, but for people that travel outside of the area to go to an Asda. I do it myself occasionally because I like Asda. I also go to Tesco's and Sainsbury's and Waitrose. I go to all of these places. I don't think that in Selsey we have that, but I want to get away from the issue of Asda and Selsey because I think everybody's jumped on the bandwagon of saying this is the problem, so we've got to fight this, and actually it is deflected from the fact that the problem is we need some help for our high street today. We needed it last year, the year before.
Absolutely
we don't need it when Asda's got here, and we're in a deeper pool, if we're going to be, than we are now. So it's deflected really from what can we do today.
I agree with you, and I think this is the problem that we have, because the neighbourhood plan, which I was told actually would go to referendum at the end of last year, because it hasn't actually gone to referendum, and it looks like it could be the end of this year. What happens if that is actually voted down? What happens if the people of Selsey actually say, look, we don't really want this, we want to have more focus on the high street, this is not really what we want.
Don't we cross that bridge when it comes to it?
Well, no, because actually the fact is that once planning permission has been granted, it's been granted. So you're faced with a situation that the neighbourhood plan has been thrown out by the people of Selsey, but we still have a very large development going on.
There's a lot of speculation going on, isn't there?
Well, that's not speculation, that's fact.
We're looking at a very sort of downside thing of our sort of crushing it will be if it all goes wrong.
Well, the point is that in terms of a supermarket placed 0.8 of a mile outside the centre of town, because what you've done, Dennis, is you've completely split the high street, and you see. The NPPF is there for a reason, and the reason it's there is because a great deal of background research has been done, and that background research very clearly indicates that once you split the retail areas, then one of those retail areas will suffer. Now, Park Farm is not well connected to the centre of the retail area. It's very poorly connected. It's going through a no man's land of residential properties. It doesn't even have a pavement the entire way. So, you know, I've spoken to people, and elderly people, and they've said to me, there's no way that I could get up there. How can I get up there? I look after a chap who drives a scooter. He's said to me, there's no way that I can get up there. And, when we're talking about the NPPF, it talks about sustainable communities. The idea of a sustainable community is that it meets the needs of the whole community, including elderly people who would find it extremely difficult to access Park Farm. Very, very difficult for them to get up there. And I think we have to give some thought to that. This is why this whole notion of linked trips, I think, evidence certainly suggests it is not going to happen because it's just too far away. However, perversely, if you have a good competitively priced supermarket in the centre of town, again, evidence proves quite conclusively that it might fly in the face of logic, but actually footfall is increased and trade will increase, which brings me back to why was the possibility of Asda not going into Budgeons properly explored at the time.
Donna, I wanted to ask you what else it is you're passionate about. You're so passionate about the Asda situation. What else in your life? Where have you come from, for a start?
Well, I'm quite boring, so probably talking about me is not particularly interesting. I have an enormous sense of social justice.
Okay.
I was brought up by. Well, my father didn't actually have me till he was about 55, and he was born in about 1907, I think. Mm-hmm. So he lived through 2 world wars, through a general strike, etc., etc. So I feel passionately in social justice, and I've always worked on an entirely voluntary basis, advocating for people who aren't able to advocate for themselves. I think it's vitally important to do that.
And why Selsey for you?
Well, we originally came here because my husband took up a post at the local school.
Oh, I see.
Some years ago. But we really liked it, and we chose to bring our younger daughter up here. And he now works in London, but he actually commutes there now.
Yeah, okay.
Because we like it so much here and we have committed to it.
Yeah.
The community feel here, I think, is incredibly important, and I know you, Lynn, work incredibly hard to put together amazing days like the D-Day celebrations and such like, and enormous respect for you in doing that, because I certainly couldn't do that. But that's something that I think we really have to preserve, look after, and make sure sustains for generations.
I think the Selsey community as a whole does that, and it's not just people that set up the day. The Selsey community as a whole does have that feel.
Yes.
It does have that village united feel, even today, even with all of this division about Asda and everything else, that you're quite right, has had an effect on the village, or the town, if you like. People call it a town or a village. It depends where you come from.
It's a village.
In Selsey. It's a village with a town attitude sometimes, and a town with a village attitude other times. So it just depends, really. But I'd love to know more about, I know you don't want to talk about yourself, but what else are you passionate about? What else in your life is there that you're passionate about? If you weren't debating about the Asda commercial, retail, development, whatever, what else would you be carrying a torch about?
Well, I'm a carer. I care full-time for a 92-year-old man.
Lovely.
I also teach. I privately tutor English, and I teach English as a second language. So I feel passionately about good communication. And I also feel passionately that carers should be respected and supported. So,
a good place to be. A good place to be.
Yes.
Isn't it? And there's lots of carers in Selsey. That's another thing about Selsey. They are a very caring lot. You have to be because of the population that we've got, I think, don't you?
Yes, of course.
And I'd love to see more going on out there.
I think there are probably very few communities that have what we have with regard to looking after people.
Yeah.
And all the bits and bobs that go on the phone call in the morning just to make sure you're all right.
Yeah, we get that.
Yeah, it's all those sorts of little bits and bobs, and so many of them that go on.
That's right.
Which proves generally that these things can't run without people getting involved.
No.
And so generally Selsey is a caring community.
It is.
And I think, and I feel quite strongly about it, that probably that's what we're all afraid of losing. And that's what we're all, certainly with me, I just think, I don't want other people here. I don't want infiltrators moving in. Hold on, I'm one of them.
I think
but I guard it jealously.
One thing, Donna, you did say was that it is fear. It is fear, isn't it? It's fear of the unknown.
No,
fear of how we're going to turn out.
It's not fear of change.
No,
it's not fear of change. It's a fear that if you do too much to Selsey, you completely change its character. Now, that's my concern. That if we do too much to Park Farm, and if it does have the effect that I and many other people believe it will have, and certainly evidence would suggest it will have, I know people don't want to hear that, but that's the case. That's why we have the NPPF, in order to preserve towns like ours. If we do too much, the character of Selsey will change. Now, I take on board what you're saying. The high street is already compromised. So let's not do something which is going to tip it over the edge. Okay, let's take a deep breath and let's think, right, let's look at what we could do with Budgeons. Let's look and see what we can do to reinvigorate the high street and make sure that it's there for people, my children, my grandchildren to enjoy. Let's not at this particular point do something which could potentially compromise it to the point when we lose it. And if you lose the high street, you lose the D-Day celebrations, you lose the turning on of the lights, you lose the festival, because you fragment the community, and then we stop having Selsey. Selsey will cease to be the town that we know and love.
I understand what you're saying. I just can't see that we have to blame Park Farm Development for all of that. I don't think that is the one thing that's going to create it.
No,
I don't think it will create it. So,
no. I think it will be a major issue in it, and it may well tip us over the edge, and that's my concern. And I think that Selsey deserves the right to put this to bed once and for all, and for the neighbourhood plan to go to a referendum so we know absolutely whether this is what people want or whether they don't want it.
I think a referendum would be a very good idea, as long as people are going to get... Yes, I do agree that a referendum would be a very good idea, but it's too late for that now.
So why did that not happen?
We can't go down that avenue now. That's what I was going to say. We can't talk about that because it's gone.
But, so, maybe there is an opening. Maybe we can do something. This is why it's completely wrong to have a potentially character-changing development right on the edge of town when the people have not had their say, and they've not been in a position to say whether they actually want it or not. That's my point. It's utterly undemocratic, and there's no social justice there as far as I'm concerned.
I thought they were allowed to sort of have their say on this.
Yeah.
No, it will be the referendum. The problem is, Dennis, that technically, because this has been driven at speed by the developers, that actually planning permission may be granted before we have an opportunity to have our say in the referendum. And then where are we left? We are potentially left with a situation where we have a big development that the people of Selsey have said they don't actually want. But we can't do anything about it because planning permission...
This development has been going on now. This thing has been going on now for nearly 2 years, right? When I first got together with Hugh and talked about it on the radio, it was probably nearly 2 years ago. So we have had an opportunity to get together a referendum.
No, we're not allowed. We can't do that. I asked for that. I asked for a referendum last August,
but Selsey
and I
has
was told
plenty of opportunity to voice its opinions, and it does it all over the social media.
That's not true, Lynn. With respect, that's not true. Okay, not everybody engages in social media. All right. We've conducted some petitions, we've conducted surveys. All I can say is I'm not a statistician, but broadly speaking, we've got 6 to 1 against. The point is, democratically, the neighbourhood plan has to go to a referendum. Now, it's okay to grant planning permission if we have an emergent neighbourhood plan. If it's a small development that isn't really particularly contentious, it's not going to make any great difference, and it's probably going to go through at the end of the day anyway. But to grant planning permission on the basis of a neighbourhood plan which has not yet been ratified for a development which is probably the most contentious development that this peninsula has ever seen is absurd.
Okay.
Because we are not having the opportunity to have our say at the ballot box as to whether or not this is what we want or not.
Can I ask you a very pointed question then? In the event that Asda goes ahead and this time next year it's starting to be built, what as a councillor would you do to make it right for Selsey, or to try and balance the scales for Selsey? As a councillor, what do you think that you're going to do? Say it's already passed, say it's done, say it's a done deal and it's being built.
Well, I will certainly be fighting extremely hard
for it not to happen.
No.
But in the event that it happens...
I will be fighting extremely hard to look at funding opportunities which are available out there.
Yeah.
And I will be advocating extremely strongly that Selsey Town Council puts in grant applications and finds money in whichever way we possibly can in order to try to focus our attention on the high street.
That would be wonderful.
To see what's necessary. And one of those things will be to set up residents groups, community associations, to try to send it out. They will be the catalyst, and I've already spoken about this. They will be the catalyst, and I have an expectation, a hope, because it's what I've been involved with before, that this will spread out like a spider's web and we will have more of an idea about what people want. want. But it has to be funded. There is funding out there. We have to find it, we have to tap into it, and we have to focus it on the high street. And I will be advocating for that.
And when I asked what you were passionate about, that's another thing that you're passionate about, you
Yes,
see.
of course.
So that was great. I totally agree with you. And if you do that, in that event, I'll totally be behind you.
Right, well,
So, yes.
I will but to be frank, I will do that irrespective whether Asda goes through or not.
Exactly.
Because the high street is struggling, of
Yes.
course, we know that. So let's look at ways that we can all come together to do something about that.
That's wonderful.
Well, I've nothing more to add to that, Dennis. I think we've learned an awful lot from our chat with Donna today. It certainly opened my eyes to one or two things that I wasn't aware of. And there's a good many things, of course, I'm not aware of. But with relevance to the Asda development especially, and that it's even though it's a slim hope, there is hope that it won't go ahead for those people that don't want it to. And I'd just like to say thank you to Donna for coming in and opening our eyes a little bit and giving us her opinions on the Asda development and the increase in housing and some insight into how Selsey might go in the future. So thank you, Donna.
Well, thank you for your time.
Lynn?
Well, yeah, thank you, Donna. When it goes ahead, and if it goes ahead, then I'll be right behind you in looking after the high street, I promise
thank
you.
I hope, I would hope that we can all come together
that's right.
and do the
That's right.
do
Because
the best
we will.
possibly can.
Whatever happens, we will all come together
Yes.
in the future and do what we can for
We have
Selsey.
to do our best.
The Weather Report.
And here's the weather forecast for the coming week. Monday's going to be a bit showery, some rain, broken sunshine throughout the day, a high of 14 degrees centigrade and quite windy. Tuesday, we move on to Tuesday. Tuesday's going to warm up a little bit. It's going to be sunny around mid-afternoon or from midday onwards, with a high of 17 degrees and it feels like about 19 degrees and wind of 10 to 12 miles an hour, so not too bad at all. Wednesday's going to start sunny and cloud over a bit later in the day, but pretty much sunny most of the daytime with a high of 16 degrees. Thursday's much the same, starting off cloudy, bit of broken sunshine mid-afternoon, high of 16 degrees, feel like about 19, and a moderate wind, 11 to 12 miles an hour. Friday's going to get quite warm, although it's still going to be broken sunshine, but a high of 17, feeling like about 21 degrees, so and a wind of 13 to 15 miles an hour, so a moderate breeze there. And on Saturday, Saturday's going to be much the same. It's going to be a bit cooler. It's going to get sunny Saturday afternoon, and with a high of about 15 degrees, and it'll only feel like 15 degrees, and wind about 14 to 16 miles an hour. And that's the forecast for the coming week. And we join Dennis Cowan now for Videowatch.
And welcome to another Video Watch with Dennis Cowan. We shall review old and new DVDs and do the countdown on the top 20 supplied by Steve Saunders at Reflex DVD in the High Street Selsey. And then I shall take a stroll over to the Selsey off license and look at another selection of rentable DVDs along with special reviews. We begin this week with Now You See Me 2013. This is a 12 rated film and it stars Michael Caine, Morgan Freeman, Woody Harrelson and Jesse Eisenberg. This is a thriller with a twist of amazing magic stunts involving a rather peculiar plot that keeps one guessing as to the motive. The magicians have an agenda set in stages, and the cops are certain this involves a heist of millions. The only thing that disappointed me was the DVD. It actually says 16.9, but it only worked in 4.3, and even then some of the titles were partially out of the picture, leading to me to think that the widescreen was actually necessary on this one. So I don't know what video you'll get, maybe the Blu-ray ones do it differently. However, we move on then to Paul 2012. This is a 15 certificate, and it stars Simon Pegg, Sigourney Weaver, Jason Bateman and Seth Rogen. It's obviously played for laughs. This E.T. themed sci-fi uses the blind beliefs of alien hunters in setting up two guys in an RV trailer on a pilgrimage who meet a stray E.T. creature and want to get him home like the Spielberg alien. The effects are first rate, so I think this will have gone out many a time at the time, but it's still worth another look. And then we move on to Stories 24, which is a 15-rated film, 2012, starring Noel Clarke, Laura Haddock. This tale involves a crashed military cargo plane. It carries top-secret items, one being an alien. Not a friendly sort, of course. It spends much of the time concentrating on a storage facility. The thing is there, and our two best friends are in there checking out their possessions after a terrible breakup. Now they must escape this alien. On the whole, it's not a bad effort for a UK film. So if you get time for that, seek that one out. And then we come to an older film, Virus, 1999, and this has got an 18 certificate, starring our friend there, Jamie Lee Curtis, William Baldwin, and the ever-famous Donald Sutherland. It's a seagoing sci-fi come horror flick that was much underplayed despite the list of A players when it first came out. The effects are centred on machinery and a mysterious energy force. The cast are a salvage crew who find a Russian ship which is abandoned. The pace is good and the action plentiful, and this does stand out as a pretty good film, even now. We then move on to kind of the despicable horror section, and this one is Pig Hunt, 2008, and it's an 18 film. Definitely horror and in the vein of Chainsaw Massacre and Wrong Turn. We have a bunch of 20-something friends who go to a remote ranch to hunt wild pigs, of all things. They hear of the legend of Ripper, a 3,000-pound black renegade boar. What they didn't count on was the crazies, always a bunch of crazies, who worship that legend and begin hunting the hunters. So if you like things like Hostel, etc., this is bloody. Then we move on to Arachnoquake, 2012, rated 15, all about spiders, and big spiders at that. The hunt is on after an earthquake in Texas upsets the eco-balance and a new breed of spiders emerge who spit out deadly venom. This species of albino spider are killing the locals, and those brave enough to set out to exterminate the threat against humans, of course. We then move on to April Fool's Day. It's a 1986 film, probably one of the very earliest, rated 15, and this was directed by Fred Walton, who did quite a few horror vein stuff. There have been others like this, like Valentine's Day, Prom Night, etc., and it is in the typical 80s style. And it is a decent film for horror fans who like slasher films. The great difference here is that it's all a prank, and probably watchable for 12s by now. The picture quality after the dubious camera-held opening scene is good, and it is 16 by 9 widescreen compatible. It's not bad, but it is rather a cheat for those who like the cast killed off. And then we move on to AI or A1, Artificial Intelligence, 2001-12. This was one of the early films starring Jude Law and, of course, Haley Joel Osment, E of the Sixth Sense, I See Dead People. It's a Steven Spielberg film, high class and over 2 hours in length. The premise is a young robot android boy, obviously played by Osment, and he is given to childless parents. It's a kind of experiment. This boy has human feelings and he's a prototype. The effects are superb, and there is a weepy emotional side to this as the boy struggles to become accepted as human and wants to know who created him as he searches for a mother. So there we have that. We now come on to the top 20 as from the 15th of June. and this has been supplied by Steve of Reflex DVD, 79 The High Street. And we go straight to number 1, and the Kingsman is there. We go to number 2, and that is Taken 3. We go to number 3, and in there now is 50 Shades of Grey. And this stars Dakota Johnson, and it's from the book to film, so can't say much more than that. It's a 15 rating, and as I say, that's at number 3. At number 4 we've got Big Hero 6. At number 5 we've got The Interview. At number 6 we come in with The Gambler, which we did last week. And then at number 7 we've got Unbroken, and this is rated 15. It's an incredible survival drama and surrounds itself with the 1938 Olympics. And then we go to number 8, and we've got Addicted, and this stars Sharon Leal and Tyson Beckford. It's based on a Zane story, rather sexy, a sexy drama from a provocative bestseller. So there you have it, that's at 8. We then move to 9, and we've got Stretch in there. At number 10, The Kidnapping of Freddie Heineken. At number 11, Birdman. At number 12, American Sniper. At number 13, we've got The Loft. At 14, we've got Out of the Dark. At 15, we have Mordecai. At 16, Age of Kill, and this stars Martin Kemp and Patrick Bergin. It's about a disgraced special ops sniper and the assassination of 6 targets, and that's all I can tell you. Then at number 17 we've got Selma, which I shall just talk about very shortly. And we've got 18, Vice. At number 19, Shaun the Sheep. And number 20, Into the Woods. Now, Selma, the film provided by Steve, stars Martin Sheen, Oprah Winfrey, Tom Wilkinson, Cuba Gooding Jr., and Tim Roth. And it's an excellent film based on Martin Luther King and the evils of the Ku Klux Klan. Selma, of course, it isn't a woman, it's a place where these things were done, and it was a special day. It's all about peaceful protesters wanting the rights for votes for black Americans and being denied their basic rights, and the fight to get justice in the face of corrupt cops, the FBI and state governors that got away with murder. Ignorant whites were used by the mayor and the police to look on the black as scum and second-class citizens. The film runs for about 2 hours, and it's rated 12, and this is really a painful film for the Americans because it shows them up. So if you get a chance to look at this, do so. There we are, and that's at Reflex DVD in the High Street with Steve. We now move on to Andy's off-license videos, and we have some of the films that are to be had at Andy's, besides Beautiful Wine, is Son of a Gun, starring Ewan McGregor, in a kind of full-throttle gritty heart movie, a heist movie. There you are, can't tell. Story-wise, 19-year-old JR is locked up for a minor crime, and he is watched by a notorious crime boss in Australia. See, this is in Australia, who wants to break out of jail. He wants the boy's help and involvement in a daring gold heist. So there you are, Ewan McGregor, it says, does the fine job as usual. And then we've got Red Tails, and this is a 12 certificate. The last one was 15. And it stars Cuba Gooding Jr. again. It's a World War II drama involving planes in the African
American combat, set in 1944. And then another film we have is Nightcrawler, a thriller, 15 rating, involving journalists, freelance investigating crime in the dark hours of LA. And lastly, we have RoboCop, yes, another RoboCop make, 12 rating, Michael Keaton, Gary Oldman, Samuel Jackson. It's a 2014 film and a new rendering of the sci-fi cop in Detroit in 2028, and fast moving, and it's 113 minutes. We come on then to the film of the week, which I did, and this is Maleficent, a fabulous kids PG or even adult starring Angelina Jolie and Imelda Staunton, and it's a 2014 film of the Sleeping Beauty tale as from the Disney Corporation. Somehow what you'd expect actually from a Disney Corporation, but done rather differently from previous efforts to retell the Sleeping Beauty classic. Jolie plays it well throughout, and the casting of evil is overcome by another look at the Wicked Witch syndrome. The special effects are superb and numerous. For me, they work to make this film more splendid, as were the few action scenes normally reserved for things like The Hobbit. As the credits went up, I noticed that Rick Baker had a role in the creature effects, and he, being the one who did such things as An American Werewolf in London, should be mentioned. But above all, the film is a brilliant film. So I can't say any more than that, but get down to Andy's and be in the queue for that film, even though Andy has already told me it's going out quite well. So go down to Andy's, get your wine and crisps and that, and watch this film. Well, that ends another video watch, so join me again next week for another batch of video reviews, and bye-bye.
Well, thank you for that, Dennis. And that's it for this week, folks. I'd like to say a great big thank you to all our contributors, to Dennis, to John Fletcher for sitting there quietly, to Lynn Reeve, and of course to Donna Johnson, and to Robbie Burns. And this is Keith Barnes saying farewell for now. See you again next week. Bye-bye now.